And as you all know, we're here to sort of chat a little bit more about automating your accounts payable with EzzyBills Workflow Max by BlueRock and Xero, with Workflow Max obviously being sort of the key part of this. I'm sure many of you are migrating over to the new Workflow Max, have recently migrated over to the new Workflow Max, are thinking about migrating to the new Workflow Max, have clients who are migrating over to the new Workflow Max. So AP is obviously a really big part of it. So it was really exciting when the Workflow Max by BlueRock team approached us a few months ago and said, look, we're looking for a new partner to do our AP. We know that you guys have had some experience in the space, and some of you might be familiar with some of our other integrations with job and project management software such as Simpro, Ascora, WorkGuru. And they said, look, we'd love for you guys to build an integration to our new product as well. So our developers got very busy in the background and built an integration quite quickly, which is really exciting. So we've already got a number of paying customers. We've got many other ones that are, currently in the trialing testing phase, and looking forward to many others as well. Quick bit about me before we jump in. As Kedar said, and you can see on the slide, my name's Elise. I've been with EzzyBills for about 3 years and really enjoy the opportunity to chat with small business owners and accountants and bookkeepers and cloud integrators and really help you guys automate your business as much as possible. So EzzyBills started as a way primarily of extracting data from invoices and pushing it through to accounting software. But as I've mentioned, we've really sort of grown into a full AP solution with all sorts of different bits and pieces. So today I'm obviously going to focus on the bits of our software that are most relevant to Workflow Max, but we do have lots of other bits and pieces. We've got lots of other YouTube videos and lots of other sort of documentation for other things we do. I would like to make this as interactive as possible, so feel free to pop your questions in the chat. And Kedar, who sort of introduced the session, is here primarily to kind of help sort of moderate and facilitate the Q&A. So if it's sort of an easy kind of question that can be answered in the chat, he'll do that. If it's something that, he wants to sort of ask in front of everyone for me to answer, then we will do that as well. So let's jump in. So basically on the agenda today, the way that I've structured the session is we're going to have 4 sort of case studies. And over the past number of months, I've met with a number of clients that are now using the new integration or thinking of using the new integration, and gotten a pretty good sense of the types of businesses that are using Workflow Max and the different sort of use cases that people are asking for. So what I've done is I've created sort of 4 different personas, 4 different types of businesses, and we're sort of going to go through the case studies of each of those businesses in terms of the types of business and how EzzyBills can help them with sort of their Workflow Max by BlueRock integration. Please ask questions as we go, and let's jump in. So the first business that I'd like to introduce you guys to is Mark's Marketing Agency. So Mark's Marketing Agency has been using EzzyBills to push their invoices into Xero for many years. And after migrating across to the new Workflow Max by BlueRock, they decided they wanted to use EzzyBills to automate data entry into Workflow Max as well. So I know there are many of you on the call today that are sort of, diehard EzzyBills customers. You've been using us for a long time with Xero and are really excited to sort of learn more about this integration. So if that's you, here's what you've got to do. So if you go into your current EzzyBills account, what we're sort of offering now for people who are already customers of EzzyBills, already have existing EzzyBills account, is you can create a second EzzyBills Workflow Max by BlueRock account that's directly linked to your current account. So all you've got to do, again, is log into your EzzyBills account. And if you go into the settings menu, account settings, you've got a button here that says add new account to Workflow Max by BlueRock Group. You can click on add, and then basically what will allow you to do is create a second EzzyBills account directly linked to the first account for login and subscription purposes, but a standalone account for the ability to use Workflow Max. So you want to create a username that's obviously different from your main account. So we can call it, what were we, Mark's marketing agency. So we can call it marketing agency Workflow Max, let's say. Again, put in an email address, put in a password, put in a phone number. Choose your location, which for most of us will be Australia, which is the top of the list, and then integrate with Workflow Max and click register. And what will happen as soon as you do that is EzzyBills will create a second account that is linked directly with your first account. And so in the top corner, you'll see now a drop down. You've got your first account. Let's say that was the account that you've had before with Xero. And now you've got the second Workflow Max account. Now, before you can start processing documents, there's a second step that you need to do. So in order to do that, you've got to go into the app section, Workflow Max by BlueRock, and there's a button here, Connect to Workflow Max by BlueRock. So you just click on that link, and then we will take you through some steps to authenticate and authorize and connect to Workflow Max by BlueRock, and then your account will be set up and ready to go. Okay, so once that's done, you can start processing documents. So we're just going to jump back to the first account, and I guess in this case you're maybe familiar with EzzyBills because you've been using us in the past, but just as a refresher, there's 3 ways of getting documents from the outside world through to your job or project management software. So there's email, drag and drop, and the mobile app. So when you create your username, we use that to create an email address. So in this case, Workflow Max by BlueRock at EzzyBills1.com. You can drag and drop into this box. You can hit the select button and we'll pull up the documents from your computer, and you can choose which ones you'd like to push through. And we also have a mobile app that you can take photos of physical documents. So what we're going to do is we are just going to take our new account. We're going to take a document and we will just drag and drop into the bar and let the document process. Now, in the interest of time, because I know everyone's really busy, what I've done is I've run that same document last night just to show you how it works. So what will happen is in a few seconds, that document tile will turn orange, and you'll see this waiting approval tile. So what we've got to do in the waiting approval tile is click approve. And if you're already familiar with our Xero integration, one of the main reasons that this is different is because with the Xero integration, the default is you upload a bill and it pushes straight through to Xero. You can review that data in Xero as a draft invoice, and then make any changes or edits in Xero. For Workflow Max, as you're probably aware, there's no concept of an invoice in Workflow Max. All of the documents need to be either created as a purchase order or they need to be created as a job, connected to a job. So in order for the document to push through to Workflow Max, you need to allocate it to a job. So if you just send it through to EzzyBills in the sort of normal way that you're used to, it will get stuck on the dashboard. So you've got to come into the dashboard. We've got this review screen, so you can review the document, you can review any of the data, you can review any of the line item details. So all of this is editable. If there is anything that you want to edit or change, add a new line. But the essential piece of making this work is to enter the tracking. So what you want to do is enter the job number associated with this invoice. And we go into your Workflow Max and we pull all of the active jobs. So since we're a marketing agency, we're going to do a brand refresh. We'll allocate this job to the brand refresh and we will click approve. I just noticed in the chat, somebody asked if we integrate with MyUp and QuickBooks. Yes, we do integrate with MyUp and QuickBooks as well. Since you asked, I'll just pull it up quickly. This is a list of all of the apps we integrate with. So Xero, MyUp, and QuickBooks are obviously the main small business accounting software pieces. And then these are the other job and project management pieces of software that we integrate with as well. We do integrate with Simpro. So Xero, MyUp, QuickBooks, NetSuite, Simpro, Tidy, Deer, Sin7 Core, Ascora, Scoro, WorkGuru, and Workflow Max are the main ones. So definitely something to keep in mind. And if you're interested in any of those other integrations, we've got recorded webinars, and you can also contact our team directly, and we'd be happy to set up a time to chat. Sorry. Okay, amazing. So we're back on our dashboard. We've got the document that we've just allocated a job to. As we can see, this is the new one that's just pushed through, but this is the one that we've allocated a job to. And we know that the document has pushed across because the invoice tile turns green, and EzzyBills tells us the purchase order that we have created. So the default workflow for Workflow Max is that we create purchase orders in Workflow Max. You'll see in a minute there are other options as well. And in order to view this purchase order, there's two options. We can either click on the Workflow Max link that's been generated on the invoice tile, or you can go into the Workflow Max purchases tab and see it from there. So we will click on the Workflow Max tab. And we can see a couple of things. So we can see the job that this has been allocated to. We can see the supplier. We've got the description. So we've pulled the invoice number and the doc ID, which is just an EzzyBills number that we sort of generate to identify each of the documents. And our developers are working on adding the link to the original document in the description. So we can't actually attach documents in Workflow Max due to a limitation of their API. But our developers are working on being able to include a link in this section as well. So you just have the link and you can view the original document if required. And then we've got all of the line item details from the invoice. So in order to push this across to the job, we click on Add Bill. We enter the invoice number, which we can copy and paste, as you saw that I did from the previous screen. Hit save. And then we will be able to go back into our jobs. And we will be able to see that in this brand refresh job, all of those line items have been pushed across. And the reason that you see it sort of twice is because I did a test document last night that pushed through as well. So you can obviously add multiple purchase orders to the job, and you'll get the line item details of all of them that will come through. Okay, let's take a minute for some questions.
So we do have a few questions already. So the first question that I see here is Rick asking, how do you enter the job cost category that just got billed? Example, job cost category like paint or overheads or bricklayers within the job.
Yeah, it's a good question. So at this stage, we are working on a solution, but it does need to be done manually. So if you click on any of the items that get pushed through, you've got the ability to allocate a cost code there. So at this stage, it's a manual step, but we are looking for other solutions moving forward.
And then we have another question. I think it's a simple question. Can you please explain it again? How to create a purchase order? I believe it's just as you showed. As soon as you send the document to EasyBills, and then when EasyBills, you then allocate the job from the Workflow Max, and then as soon as you submit it, we automatically create the purchase order. Isn't that right, Elise?
Correct. So it's done automatically. Correct. So all you have to do is, yeah, exactly as Kedar said, and exactly as I've shown, you submit the document to EasyBills, you allocate a job, and then we automatically create the purchase order.
Oh, that's great. We're getting heaps of questions, at least. That's really great. I have so far I have about 8 questions here. So I think we're gonna just pause here a bit and then let's just focus on a few questions. Can we
Yeah.
create purchase order in EasyBills which links to Xero?
Can you create a purchase order in EasyBills which link to Xero? No.
I don't think, oh yeah, so EasyBills doesn't have an option to create purchase order in EasyBills, but you can send the document to EasyBills. It will create a purchase order in your workflow max. And then depending on whether you, Elise, please correct me if I'm wrong. Then depending on whether you have workflow max setting on to push it through to Xero, or you can turn it off and then you can let EasyBills push it through to Xero, which will push the attachment as well in the Xero.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So yeah, if you've got a purchase order generated from an external place, you can use EasyBills to push it through to Xero, or if you've got a purchase order in Xero, you can use that. But yeah, we don't, as Kedar said, we don't create purchase orders in EasyBills.
So we have Rick here again asking, how do you enter the cost code or subheading within the job, like paint, bricks, etc.? Do we support that at the moment? It's subheading within the job.
Subheading within the job. We'll have to
I'm
get
not
back.
really sure, Rick. Are you asking about the cost code or?
Okay, let's,
So, okay. Um,
yeah, go ahead.
So this cost code, actually, I just confirmed with one of our colleagues. He says that's cost code is the item code that we read off the bill, like we extract it, and then that's what the cost code is that we've put it in here. All right. So what if you use zero tracking category for that? For what? Like, you have to be specific with your questions. So where are you trying to use the zero categories? Are you trying to use zero category in workflow mix? I'm not sure that would be supported, but if you
So,
have a
sorry, I'm just going to jump in. So, if your Xero tracking categories match the job numbers in Workflow Max and you've got a Xero export task at the end of your workflow, then the jobs will push through um, to Xero. Not sure if that directly answers the question or not, but that's one way of looking at it.
so, but so the process is same, right? They come to Isabel, select the job uh, during approval, and then they hit approve, and then it goes to Workflow Max. The job that is selected, if that job and the zero tracking category, that name is same, then you saying we will use it in Xero. Is that right?
Correct.
Oh,
Correct.
okay, got it. Okay. So the next one is if you have an invoice or receipt relevant to multiple jobs, can you allocate individual line items to separate jobs?
It's a really good question, and it's definitely on our roadmap, but it's not something that's possible yet. So I guess one of the things that EasyBills is known for is doing line item extractions, and you can see we've got these line item purchase order creations. So it's something a lot of people have asked about, and something we're working on, but it's not quite ready yet.
Okay. So that answers the question. Then we have Taj asking if there is already a PO, will EzzyBills auto link if the PO is on the invoice? I think I can answer this question. So this feature, like this is Workflow Max is very recent integration, right? It's been around just for a couple of months. As of now, that is the only process we do, right? We create a PO. So if you already have a PO, we're not going to do anything to that, but we would still, when you process a bill, we would still create a new PO. Alice, please correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct. We do
Okay.
not do purchase order matching yet in this integration, potentially something for down the track. But because you can't create a bill in Workflow Max due to Workflow Max's API, we don't have the ability to sort of match a bill against a PO because all we can create at this stage is a PO.
And I
So,
think that's
you know, I think maybe we'll take a break from the questions just because I want
yep,
to get back
yep,
to the
yep. I'll
thing.
just go through them. I'll answer. Yeah, you can continue. Yep. All right.
And yeah, maybe we can just go through sort of a curated, like I'll go through the next case study and then we can go through maybe sort of a curated list and maybe some of them you can answer
Yep.
in the chats. Cool. And definitely at the end, I'm happy to stay if there's more questions, but for people who might not be interested as much in the questions, we'll just push through. Cool. Okay, so that's Mark. So the next EzzyBills customer or potential EzzyBills customer that I'm going to introduce you guys to is Connor's Construction Agency. So the team of Connor's Construction have recently migrated over to Workflow Max by BlueRock. Before, in the old Workflow Max, they were using a different document extraction tool that's no longer integrating with the new product. And what they'd like to do is replicate their current process. So they're not interested in creating a purchase order with multiple lines. They have multiple bills that they associate with each job, and all they want is for EzzyBills to create a single line cost associated with each job. So again, if they needed to create a new EzzyBills account, they'd go to our website. Again, I'm not gonna do it now, but you can go to our website, click on 14-day free trial, fill out the form. Again, integrate with Workflow Max, click register, set up a new EzzyBills account, and link with Workflow Max in the way that I've shown you before. And then once you've got a Workflow Max account, and this is a little bit tricky. So what you have to do is in the workflow, and again, our team can help you set this up. And what we've decided just before this webinar we're going to do is we will set up a few sort of templated workflows so that you don't have to do this as a manual step, or your team or our team doesn't have to do this as a manual step. But what we can do to set that up is if we go into the workflow page in the Xero export, we've got in the Workflow Max export, we've got a setting that we can just copy and paste. And what this setting does is export as a cost instead of export as a purchase order, so that we can export as a cost. So again, in order to do that, it's the same process. So once the workflow is set up, okay, let me take a step back. So EzzyBills has a concept of an active workflow and then inactive or other workflows. So EzzyBills sets one of the workflows as the default workflow. So if you just send to your regular upload email address, that's how EzzyBills will process. But we can also create other secondary workflows. And the way you would send documents to them is in a few different ways. So one option is to drag and drop into the appropriate box. So for example, here I've got a Workflow Max job cost box that I created with the workflow. Or you can send to the dedicated email address. So when you create a workflow, or when we create a workflow, or when you've got a templated workflow, each workflow has an email address associated with it. So in this case, we want the job cost one. And you could send an email to this email address, workflowmax by bluerock.workflow.wfm.jobcost@easybills1.com. And then we would export as a job cost. So when I've been speaking to people in more one-on-one demos, we've basically had a conversation about, are you using purchase orders, are you using job costs? And then we can help you set up whichever workflow is the default that you and your team are more likely to use. So once that's been set up, again, to push through a document, you do all of the same things, drag and drop email, or use the mobile app, using the job cost box. And while that's processing, I've done one last night as well. So you've got to go through the same process where you allocate a job. And then when it pushes through, instead of the purchase order creation, which we saw before, we have got a tile that'll look like this. So it'll just say created, cost details, and workflow finished. And when that has happened, we know that the cost has been allocated against the job. So we can jump back into Workflow Max, view our list of jobs. And again, this was for Connor's construction, creating a tiny house. And what this workflow has done is it's created a single line cost directly linked to the job. So we've just got the invoice number, the supplier, the tax, and the total, and all of the details. So that's how Connor Constructions would create a job cost as a single line. Okay, happy to open it up for some more questions.
All right, that's great. So I have a few already for you. So the first one is Colin's asking, it looks like we can change the phases which will push the cost to the correct budget lines. Is that correct? Now, I didn't actually understand the question because there's not much explanation here, but seems like it relates to, can we change the phases in which we will push the cost to correct budget lines?
Yeah, Colin, maybe if you can just clarify what you mean by phases. If you can clarify what you mean by phases, I think that would be helpful to answer that question. Okay.
Okay, the other one is, so you can create purchase orders in Workflow Max. If we have a bill to match against that, can we push it through, which will create a new PO, then void that and match in WFM, a workaround? I think what's been asked is there is a bill that has come, we've pushed it, and we've created a PO, but there was already a PO for that. So obviously I think you can void one of them and then just put cost and invoice details on the other one, right?
Yeah, you can definitely void or cancel something in Workflow Max, but we, as we've mentioned before, don't have the ability to match.
All right, that takes care of it. So if we have, okay, so again, there is a question on phases. If we have different phases in WFM, folders within a job, how do we allocate it to the correct phase? I think it's a Workflow Max feature, which is not supported by us at the moment. We might look at having a look at that phases thing in the future, but at the moment we don't support the phases feature. It's one of the Workflow Max features. So
Yeah,
I think that answers for our Steve. All good.
yeah, we'll speak to our developers about adding that, but yeah, not currently available.
There's one simple question which I can answer about Workflow Max. Can you change the workflow after the bill has been loaded into EzzyBills? You can change the workflow, but if the bill has already been loaded, it's not gonna go onto a different workflow. It will still be on the old workflow and we will process it as per the old workflow. So if you want to process it on a different workflow, the best bet is to delete the first one, upload it again on the right one, and then you can process it.
So it depends at what point you want to change the workflow. So if you change it at the approval stage, it will push through to the new workflow. So if you have just your pre-extract extract, and then you have a change workflow task, um, it will change to the new workflow.
Well, it can only, so that's where it gets supremely technical, right? There are stages which allow change and there are stages which doesn't. So if the bill's already on to export stage, right, we don't allow the change. But if it's obviously, if it's
Right.
at waiting for approval and stuff like that, then we do allow change. But
But where this question has come up with clients that I've spoken with in the past, it's generally at the waiting approval phase. If their staff member has submitted the document to the wrong workflow when they're approving and allocating the job, then you can change into a new workflow.
okay. Another one, if we create second account for a specific department for purchase order approval processing, can we lock the operation, adding or deleting invoices of the first account only for that department? And are we able to link the same PO with the invoices added through first? It's supremely confusing. Alice, can you go to the chats? And there is a question,
Yeah, I'm gonna
1201. Yeah.
if we create a second account for a specific department or purchase order approval, can we lock the operation? So I don't know if I'm fully understanding, but I'm gonna explain what I understand, which is that if you've created two EzzyBills accounts, let's say you've got, I don't know, one for the marketing department and one for the, I don't know, finance department, then you can definitely only use one or the other to add or delete invoices. Like if you only want different people to access certain things, then you should be able to do that. Okay, I think I'm going to jump back to the webinar, and
Sure.
we'll continue soon. Okay, cool. Okay, so we've talked about Connor's constructions. We're going to move on to our third EzzyBills client. Workflow Max and Xero, Archie's Architects. So Archie's Architects wants to make sure they've got all of their data saved and stored in Xero. Of course, they want to make sure they pay their suppliers on time. They've got accurate records and GL codes. They also want to make sure they have some office expenses that don't need to be directly related to a job, and they'd like to just send them through to Xero directly as overheads. So I guess this is where the kind of three-pronged EzzyBills, Xero, and Workflow Max comes into play. Definitely all of this is possible. So again, we need a minor workflow modification. So what you would do is you would take the Workflow Max workflow, and again, our staff can do this for you, and add a Xero export task at the end. So the basic Workflow Max workflow is what it was, and then what we've done here is add just basically what we call a Xero export task or Xero export box at the end. Which is, there we go. So you can see the standard workflow would sort of end with the Workflow Max export, and then we've added a Xero export task at the end. And the way to do that is you just click on Xero export, and then we create the task for you, and then you move it and add it to the correct spot in the workflow by connecting the lines, which I've already done in this case. And then once that's done, again, you can use the workflow either through dragging and dropping into the dashboard or through using the dedicated email address to send that across. And if you do that, the document will need to be approved. It will go into Workflow Max as a job cost, and then it will push through to Xero with the line item details and with the GL coding. So again, the same process that we've gone through before, either purchase order or job cost in Workflow Max, and then pushing through to Xero at the end. In terms of pushing only to Xero, in terms of overhead expenses, and it seems like most clients I've spoken to do want this option. There's one of two ways of doing it, and I guess there's sort of pros and cons of both. So one option is to create a second EzzyBills account that's actually linked to the first account that's just integrated with Xero. So again, we could go back into the settings menu, add new account to Workflow Max group, create another EzzyBills account, integrate it with Xero, register, and then you've got a second account that's connected only with Xero, and then you've got all of the functionality of the Xero account if you wanted to set up employee expense claims or spend money transactions or any of the other sort of features and functionality that we have with Xero. And the second option is to set up a Xero workflow in Workflow Max, and just similarly to the other workflows that we've chatted about, we can have a Xero only workflow. And then if you process to the Xero only workflow, then the documents will process through, obviously, only to Xero. So again, we're going to build these templated workflows so that they're available for you to use. And that is what it would look like. And then again, to send to Xero, it would be the same ways, drag and drop mobile app or email. And in this case, we would just drag and drop into the Xero box, which I can't access right now. Let's do this one by email, just to show you something different. So we'll go back to our workflow tab, and we can see that the Xero email address is workflowmax by BlueRock.workflow.xero at EzzyBills1.com. We put that in an email, we attach a document, and we send it across. And again, you don't need any sort of text or subject or anything else. You can just send it across like that, and then it'll push straight through to Xero. And again, just to speed up the process, this is one that I've pushed through last night. So the default again is that there's no approval on the Xero workflows. It pushes straight through, the document turns green, and then you click on the Xero link, and that'll take you directly through to the document in Xero. Again, I could do 10 hours of webinars worth of our Xero integration, but just a couple of things to sort of mention. So we do line item details, we do automated GL coding and tax coding. So we can do GL coding at a line item level. We can do tax coding at a line item level for industries such as hospitality and retail. All of this obviously can be edited and changed. We pull the date and the due date from your invoice, include the references, obviously the supplier and the tax and the total. So that's Xero. Let's take a few more questions.
All right, so coming back to questions, are you able to see the questions screen at least? So we have about 6 open questions. I've kept 2 of the Colin's questions. So he did come back with a detail asking, we set our jobs up using phases. They are short budget cost lines items when we first setting up the projects. And then he says, I know you have phases on the top right, which looks like I can change them now. So Colin, as we said, the phases is, I think, currently Workflow Max's feature, which we haven't yet touched. I'm not even sure if it's available through API or not. So we don't support phases as of now, but since a lot of people are asking, we have noted down. We will send it to our development team, and then we'll see if we can do something about the phases as well.
Yeah, I think that answers the next question too, from Shella, also about the phases. So we'll speak to our developers and yeah.
Yeah, and I will let you answer the Kirsten's question about text. So that's an interesting one. I'm going to read it. So I have a client. So Kirsten here says, I have a client using text. Is that the other app you were referring to? Is this the intended replacement for clients using that? Trust me, to all of you, I'm saying this now on live in front of you all. EzzyBills is the perfect replacement for text. Stop paying millions of dollars to text, save some money. So we'll save you some money, you give us some money.
Yeah, and I think the more politically correct answer to that is Dext integrated with the old Workflow Max by Xero and has chosen, for whatever reason, not to integrate with the new Workflow Max by Xero. Sorry, with the new Workflow Max by BlueRock. So with the new Workflow Max by BlueRock, you will not be able to use Dext. Obviously, Dext still exists with Xero and I don't know, whatever other integrations they have. But yeah, I guess that's what I was referring to without wanting to sort of call out our competitors. On a live webinar. But yeah, if you have clients that had been using Dext with the old Workflow Max, then definitely we're the people to talk to replace that function in their business.
I think this question is simple. So when we create a PO in Workflow Max, will it create it as a stock or a service PO, or does it depend on the default PO settings in WFM? It's in the chats.
If you push to Workflow Max and then to Xero, you will your Xero cost codes show, preferably as a drop down when you are approving a cost in EzzyBills. You need to manually add these under cost codes. It's a good question. We can set it up that way. We just need to change a setting. So if you're setting up an account, we've just created a setting to give that as an option. So the default is that it won't. But if you would like them to, then we can definitely set that up for you. If we only have one workflow where all the overhead costs go to a job called overhead, then in theory, would we be able to pull full P&L financial reports in Workflow Max, can set permissions to limit access to overhead job in Workflow Max so not everyone can see? Yeah, I think so. I'm not an expert on the reports in Workflow Max, but yeah, I think that makes sense. You could just have your overheads in Workflow Max as a job instead of just pushing them to Xero. I think that's a great option. Okay, Emily, does EzzyBills pick up if a document has been uploaded before Dext won't allow you to upload something that has already been processed? Yeah, so in Xero, we will detect duplicates. We won't be able to detect it in Workflow Max. So if you've got a Workflow Max export and then a Xero export, we will detect it at the Xero stage, but it's not currently available in Workflow Max.
But the workaround for that could also be wherein if the customer uses a workflow wherein every time we export it, like both the exports are in the same workflow, let's say Workflow Max export and then Xero export. So if that is the case, we would still export it to Workflow Max, but we would flag it in the Xero, right? If it's a duplicate, that could be a sign wherein if we say in EzzyBills in search approve, if we say this is duplicate and deleted, then you can just see that it's pretty sure if it's duplicate in Xero, then you must have it in Workflow Max as well. So you can just go to that Workflow Max link and then check it and delete it. So that way you will know if you're using both Workflow Max as well as Xero. If we detect duplicate in Xero, we're gonna flag it in EzzyBills. So then you can check in Workflow Max as well.
Right. Yeah, it's a good solution. Okay, I'm going to take 2 more questions and I'll jump back to finish the webinar. And then I'm obviously happy to stick around for as long as people want to keep answering the questions. Does EzzyBills archive the invoices so we can search for them? And how does it do this? So everything in EzzyBills, first of all, everything in EzzyBills is saved. Every document that we've ever processed since we started almost 9 years ago is saved. And if for whatever reason somebody is using EzzyBills and then chooses not to, they can always go back and access this stored documents, even if they're no longer able to process new documents. And on our dashboard, we've got this search approve button. And so everything is archived there. You can sort by invoice number, you can sort by supplier, you can do all sorts of different searches. And I'm going to take one more question because it leads perfectly into my next slide, which is, does EzzyBills have an approval process for invoices prior to payment? So the answer is definitely yes. And that's my next slide. So good question. Okay. So here we've got, going to introduce you to Akiva's accounting firm. So Akiva's accounting firm is working with multiple clients. Some of them are using Workflow Max by BlueRock, some Xero, some QuickBooks, some MyOb, some Escora, some Simpro, some WorkGuru, etc., etc. He wants to be able to manage all of his clients centrally, and also has some clients who would like to set up multi-level management approvals for their team. So we're sort of tackling a lot here with Akiva's accounting, but I'll just go through a few things, and this is the last case study, and then we'll stick around for questions as long as you guys would like. So what we're going to do is I'm just gonna sign into Akiva's accounting dashboard, and Akiva's accounting happens to have lots of Disney clients because he's been managing the accounts for all of Disney. So I guess the first point of this sort of case study was just to show you our sort of HQ or partner dashboard. So if you are a bookkeeper, accountant, cloud integrator, working with multiple clients, or you are a multi-entity business, then just like Akiva's accounting, you can set up and use this HQ dashboard. Now, in terms of the multi-level approvals, so we can definitely set up multi-level management approvals. We can do up to 5 levels of approval, and for each level of approval, we can set a series of approval rules. So what I'm actually going to do, change my mind, I'm going to jump back into the other account and just show you how to do that. So again, in the workflow, and like I've said a few times, we will template some of these things so they don't need to be created manually. But you can create as many approval workflows as you like, multiple levels of approval. And like I said, they can have approval rules. So you could have, let's say, for each department, so we've got a business in New Zealand that has 10 different branches around New Zealand, and every time an invoice comes in, it needs to be approved by the branch manager, then it needs to be approved by the finance manager, and then it needs to be approved by the CEO. So we've set up a number of workflows where the documents can go through that approval process. So we can set up any sort of different sort of permutation and combination. And again, we can help you set those up. The one thing I'm going to just show now in the interest of time is just the different rules that you can use. So the most common approval rule is obviously the delegated authority. So if the invoice amount is over a certain dollar value, so you could say, you know, if the invoice amount is over $1,000, then submit to akiva@accounting.com. And you could say if the supplier is from, you know, JB Hi-Fi or Coles or Bunnings, then send to joe@disney.com, etc., etc. So you could do it by dollar value, you could do it by supplier. You can set them up based on department in your business. You can do it based on, you know, if Joe was the first approver, then Jane's the second approver. So I set this up recently for actually an accounting firm who wanted to set this up for their own business. And it was basically set up that, you know, each person has a like certain manager. So if, you know, the person A approved it, then it would automatically go to person B, etc., etc. So I've given full hour webinars on approval specifically, so not going to go into it in more detail, but the answer is yes, we can definitely do multi-level management approvals. The approvers can either get emails or they can do a dashboard login if they don't want to get approval emails, and I find that's popular, especially for more senior managers that just want to log in whenever they have time and manage all the approvals that way. And we can set up an unlimited number of approval workflows. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave it at that for Akiva's accounting firm, and we'll move on to some questions and answers, and we'll
I
just
think
go
I
through
think
them.
that one answered Suzanne's question of approvals before prior to payment. It's more like prior to we put the bill in Xero or whichever accounting system you're using. So that question is answered. Elise, I'm going to ask you another one, which here is how many different workflows can we have in EzzyBills? We will need invoices to go to purchase orders, credit notes to costs, and some bills for overheads straight to Xero. Is this possible?
100%. So there's no limit on the number of workflows you can have. I've set up accounts with 20, 30, 40 workflows. Yes, it can get a little bit can be a bit time consuming to set up, but we don't have any limit in terms of the technical ability or the physical ability to set them up. So it is definitely possible.
Yeah, and if you want to set up more workflows, not necessarily you'll have to do it by yourselves. Just get in touch with us, and we would be happy to assist you. You might need to have off the pricing plans. You might need to have the correct plan to have all the customizations that you will need. But yes, that is definitely possible. Um, can you customize the file name of the cost document in the approval stage so it's labeled in particular way when pushed through to WFM? And no, you can't. So we do not change file names, and we don't allow changing of file names during approval. We do change it by ourselves. We do code it. That's an internal coding, but we don't allow customers to put the file names during approval. Next one's for you, Elise. If you push to WFM and then to Xero, will your Xero cost codes show, preferably as a drop-down, during approval in EzzyBills? Or do you need to manually add this under cost code?
So Xero doesn't have the concept of a cost code. Xero has the concept of a GL code. And we can show this. I think somebody asked a similar question earlier. It's not currently the default, but we can set it up in your account if you want us to show you the Xero cost codes. So once you've got a trial account, if you'd like us to do that, just send us an email and we will set that up for you. And we can basically look to the GL codes in Xero instead of looking to the GL codes in Workflow Max.
And I think if the whoever has asked it is asked as anonymous, but if he or she meant to GL codes, then I think we do already support showing GL codes. We can just put an approval layer before Xero, and like we can export it to the Workflow Max and then put another approval level. You can go during approval, you can select the codes, or you can see the GL codes of Xero. You can select it for that particular bill, and then you can approve it. So then we will export it to Xero. So that's a highly customized workflow, but it is definitely possible if you're asking about GL codes.
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways of doing it.
Yeah.
That's one way, or we can just look to Xero. We can sort of skip the Workflow Max and just go
Uh,
straight.
Maggie, I'm completely clueless about your question. Could you please be a bit more
I, I,
specific?
I understand it.
Oh,
Um,
beautiful.
So if I'm understanding, and again, if I'm not understanding, you can clarify, but I think it was probably in response to the approvals that if we do an approval in EzzyBills, does that mean it bypasses the approval in Xero? So as a default, it doesn't. So in the settings menu in EzzyBills, you'll be able to see that all documents export to Xero as a draft as default. But if you would like to swap it to waiting approval or approved, you can definitely do that. Generally speaking, I don't recommend it because I see our approvals process really about kind of more management approval and the Xero approval more as accounting approval. So our approvals are more If you're looking at things like, you've got a project manager or a line manager or a department manager, somebody that's overseeing a department or a project that needs to approve a bill, that's where I think our approvals are really helpful. I think that, the AP person or the finance person who's actually paying the bills, it's helpful for them to just do that final check in Xero and just make sure everything's sort of good to go for payment. Okay, can we set the approver based on the job selected? So this is something we can do with our AI task, which again, we did a webinar on this a couple of months ago. So again, definitely possible, but it will need probably some customization with our AI task because it's not sort of a rule that we set up sort of out of the box. So the answer is yes, but again, probably need some help from our team to get it set up.
So this is one more question. Can you please address zero tracking? If we use zero tracking, choosing a region or branch, will this show in EzzyBills to select and carry into Workflow Max and Xero?
So not currently, because when you've got Workflow Max, okay, let's say it this way: the default is no, because the tracking we pull are the jobs from Workflow Max and not the tracking from Xero. But we could set up a workflow where you can, I believe, pull the tracking from Xero. But let me get back to you on that.
So there is another question that's been asked. Are all the previous webinars available to download? So yes, they do. All the webinars that we do and all the demos that we do, we put them on our EzzyBills channel, which we have on the YouTube. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a link through in the chat box here. So then you can visit. So that's the YouTube channel. There you go.
Yeah, brilliant. So Keto's put a link in
And
the
yeah, if you, Elise, yeah, if you could just show that, there you go. So if you just go to YouTube, search EzzyBills, you're gonna get all the previous webinars. I think last 7, 8 years, all everything's there, right?
Yeah, it's all there. So you might have to search, but the most recent one was the AI one. There's a mobile app one, there's an approvals one, there's a Simpro one, there's just a general Xero demo. So there's yeah, lots of good stuff there. So good question, and I definitely recommend checking it out. Definitely happy to stay. I'm just conscious that it's 12:30, so if anyone does need to go, thank you so much for joining. If you haven't yet had a chance to set up a free trial, I recommend it. Go to our website. 14-day free trial. We don't ask for any credit cards or anything else, and integrate with Workflow Max and start setting up your account. Someone from our team will get in touch just to help you and make sure you are set up. And if you have any questions, and obviously, if you've got any questions, feel free to get in touch with us.
I
Support.
think we have, yeah. So we have one question which is out of syllabus for today's webinar. Today's webinar is more about Workflow Max. We have a Simpro question. I'm just gonna answer that. I'm the one who handles Simpro. So Magdalena, you're asking if we can look for a job manager in the Simpro and send the bill to him automatically. Yes, there is a standard project manager workflow we have for Simpro specifically, wherein we look up the purchase order and we look up the job that is linked to that purchase order, and then we look at who's the job project manager for that job, and we grab that email address, we send him an email straight away. So that is supported. If you want to know more, just get in touch. I believe you already have my email address, so just get in touch and I'll set up the project manager workflow on your account. I believe that answers your question. That's it, I think.
Think, are there more questions in the chat?
I think there is just one more question from Tasha. It says, with a job cost workflow, can this be line by line with customized description, cost name, or will it always come through as a lump? See, I'll stop you there because that job cost workflow is specific to Simpro. right? And
No, this
work.
is no. We've got the job cost workflow and workflow max that I demoed. So the sort of point of the job cost workflow was that we had the purchase order workflow, which does come through with line by line.
Mhm.
Um, and the job cost workflow is a single line. I think we are going to look at building that out as a line by line in the future. But at this stage, the purchase order workflow is multi-line and the job cost workflow is single line.
Oh, that's great. And then there is one more in the chat. Tasha asked again, and if you have a job cost, then onto Xero workflow, will the document be attached in Xero?
If you've got a Xero export at the end of your workflow, so I discussed that in one of the case studies. So if you've got the Xero export, if you use our Xero export, then the document will be attached. So that's definitely a benefit of using our integration with Xero as opposed to Workflow Max's integration with Xero, that the document will be attached. But as I mentioned, we are also working on building it out so that there's a link attached in Workflow Max as well. Thanks, Kirsten. This was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, there's few people saying thank you. So there was Colin, there was an anonymous user, there's Tasha, there's Kirsten. So this is gonna be here, guys, for another few minutes. If you have any more questions, feel free to shoot them up. If you get a question after you go off, Elise, could you post your email address somewhere on the screen so they can reach out to you? Or
um,
you can, or they can reach, or you can reach out to support as
you
well.
can,
It's
yeah, you can contact support at support@ezzydoc.com. I'm happy to put that in the chat. And if there's something relevant, they'll forward it to me. Yeah, Shella, no problem. Definitely happy to continue the conversation. Thanks for joining today. Thank you. We'll definitely look at using EzzyBills. Okay.
Suzanne, you mean you're not using EzzyBills as of now? I thought you are. That's not fair. You have to create a trial right away. I'm waiting for your trial.
Okay, Keto is expecting
So
135 new
people
trials.
who, so all right, to all the people who are not yet using EzzyBills, you guys are missing on something really big and something that will save you a lot of time, right? It's completely automated, super good, 100 times better than Dext. So go register, have a look, do a trial. If you have any questions, just come back to us and then we will assist you.
Yeah, so ezzybills.com, 14-day free trial, and pop in a couple of basic details, integrate with Workflow Max, and you will be off and running. So I think we'll leave it at there for now. Thank you again, everyone, so much for joining. It was really lovely to chat with you all today, and hopefully we will speak again soon. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Elise. Bye bye.